Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. You choose Label Television to inform you, but first, before we open this newscast, get the headlines with Gautier per channel.
In Kenya, game over for the opposition. The Supreme Court dismissed the two appeals seeking the invalidation of the October 26 presidential election held after the cancellation of the August poll and validated the re-election of incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta. In economy, one of the most scrutinized barometer of the state of the continent was made public today in an index published by the Ibrahim Foundation on the governance of 2017. First lesson, Africa is moving forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, once more good evening and welcome, and sorry for the slight mix-up in the headlines, but you got them. Now let's open this newscast as Kenya's Supreme Court dismissed the two appeals seeking the invalidation of October 26 presidential election held after the cancellation of the August poll and validated the re-election of incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta. The decision of the Supreme Court puts an end to an electoral process that deeply divided the country and severely affected the most dynamic economy in the region. We listen to Giovanni Ondamba for the details.
Uhuru Kenyatta has been declared the winner of the 26 October election we ran with 98% of the votes, but his victory was tarnished by a low turnout at around 39%, as the vote was boycotted by the opposition, who believed that the polls could not be fair. To protest the decision, two appeals were filed by a businessman associated with a former opposition member of parliament and two NGOs officials. They argued that the election commission should have proceeded to a new selection of candidates after the cancellation of the first election. Nevertheless, the opposition lawyers recalled the words of the president of the election commission, Wafula Chebukati, who had confessed 1 week before the election ran that he was unable to guarantee the fairness of the election, denouncing political interference. But he went on confirming that conditions were in place to organize the polls. Definitely, the decision of the Supreme Court puts an end to a 4-month electoral process that deeply divided the country and severely affected the most dynamic economy in the region. The process took too long as the Supreme Court, Kenya's highest court, took the historical decision on the continent to invalidate the August 8th election, a decision that forced people to admire the said Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the president-elect will be invested as early as 28th November this year to start his second term as president of Kenya.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, listen to some reactions of some Kenyans to these elections.
This is a consolidated petition. One is challenging the manner in which the IEBC delivered on its mandate, so that is a legal issue. The other one is going on, it's based on the 2013 decision of the Supreme Court saying once the NASA presidential candidate withdrew, there should have been fresh nominations. So one is more technical, the other one deals with the substance.
This winner takes it all presidential system has failed us. And I think it's failing many other African countries as well. Perhaps in very diverse, heterogeneous nations like Kenya, we need a hybrid, a parliamentary system that leads to a situation where majority of the citizens, or not just majority, but all citizens should feel included in government.
Furthermore, our profession, once first certainties, is becoming more and more complicated. Each week brings its share of surprises, unexpected events, physical barriers, psychological or behavioral that shatter. This is today's focus, ladies and gentlemen. Listen and watch.
Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, Hosni Mubarak, Muammar Gaddafi, Blaise Compaoré, Yahya Jammeh, all were deemed unbreakable. All fell in a jiffy, most often dropped by Diaz. And what about the Trump or Macron elections, not to mention the Brexit? Before the world was simple. Today, times are capricious. So this time is sketching before our eyes the fall of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, 93 years after holding power for more than 30 years at the head of Zimbabwe. A political dinosaur like we will not see anymore. A kind of African Castro shaped by anti-imperialism. When the moment of the fall comes, the collective memory retains only the dark side. The errors of old age, the arapets of power who are reluctant to pass the hand, nepotism, money, slumber in public, health faltering, hubris, especially which makes blind. At Mugabe, the fatal mistake is called grace, his second wife 41 years old younger than him. Too bad he did not know how to exit otherwise. For many Africans, Mugabe remains an icon. Like many of his predecessors in the history books, Sankara or Gaddafi, he owes more to his career and his fight against the old colonial past than his results at home. The fight against oppression, old or current, the lessons of governance, the International Criminal Court acting only in Africa, the NGOs with unclear goals, arrogance, leonine contracts, omnipotent multinationals, a large fringe of our public opinion, more and more horrified by these subjects. He is grateful for having incarnated the man who says no. What in him was not only a simple demagogic posture, as it could be the case of certain African leaders in difficulty. Just look at his past as a particularly uncompromising freedom fighter. Mugabe entered politics in 1960 at the age of 36 to face the openly racist regime of former Rhodesia. Arrested in 1964, he will remain in prison for more than 10 years without ever agreeing to negotiate. He will be released in 1974 when he takes the path of armed struggle from Mozambique. It will only be under the pressure of President Samora Machel and Kenneth Kaunda, who threatened to release him, that he will resolve to sign the Lancaster House Agreement in 1979. Everyone has forgotten, but Mugabe during a decade has implemented a real policy of reconciliation. He retains the wide supervision of the army or the intelligence service. Those who were chasing him before integrate white ministers into his government, their reserve of the post of deputy. He will even make Jan Smith the prime minister of desegregationist Rhodesia, who had been in Batish one of his advisors. A second Robert Mugabe then appears. Increasingly authoritarian and brutal, he exercises his power in the most absolute solitude. The icon has become autocrat and a plague victim in the eyes of an international community that has never forgiven him, British in the lead, to have questioned the interests of white farmers and yet treated with all the respect dictators much worse than him. At the time of judgment, let us keep simplistic analysis. Let us remember that the tyrant who completes his career in the worst possible way has been a hero, and let's remember the reasons for his metamorphosis.
In Equatorial Guinea, Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea, in short PDGE, wins all seats at the legislative, senatorial and municipal elections. However, the opposition claims fraud and irregularities. Listen to Gauthier Brachano, who tells us more.
The Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea, PDGE, literally meaning Partido Democrático de Guinea Ecuatorial in Spanish, and Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea in English, which has been in power for nearly 40 years in the country, has once again won the legislative, senatorial, and municipal elections of November 12, with nearly 100% of the vote. The president of the National Electoral Commission, Clemente Ngongangema Ongene, announced on Friday that the PDGE and its 14 allied parties get all 75 seats at the senatorial level. At the Chamber of the Members of Parliament in Malabo, only a single member of the opposition of the Citizens Party for Innovation was elected, leaving 99 seats to the ruling party. Some 300,000 Equatorial Guinean voters were called to the polls in the country, where multi-party system was introduced in 1991, but led by President Teodoro Obiang Soho since 1979. He is now 74 years, one of Africa's longest-serving presidents. The opposition denounced multiple irregularities on the day of the vote. Access was cut off and remained very restricted and of the result. Turnout at the polls was 85%, said the president of the Electoral Commission, who reiterated that no protests of the results or claim has been recorded.
Also, the NDPP will be argued at the High Court in Pretoria, Johannesburg today, Monday, November 20, 2017. Listen to more details with Georgina Mpiga.
The independence of National Director of Public Prosecutions, in short, NDPP, will be argued at the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, Johannesburg, today Monday, November 20th, 2017, after the former head of public prosecutions, Molisi Zazana, denied a golden handshake of $17.3 million from President Jacob Zuma and left his office in 2015. Zazana still believes that his departure was linked to the corruption charges against the president, with some fearing that he would reinstate them. Nevertheless, the Helen Zuma Foundation, in short, HSF, sought an order declaring the removal of Zazana invalid according to an application that was launched by the Corruption Watch, Freedom Under Law, and the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, in short, CASAC. The Helen Suzman Foundation intends to make an oral submission regarding the structural and operational independence that is required of the office of the NDPP.
Now, let's talk about economy. In this newscast, the Statistics Office said on Monday that Nigeria's economy grew to 1.4% year-on-year in the third quarter. This has led to the extension of its slow climb out of its first recession in generations. The details are with Thibaut Otungu Tabaga.
Africa's largest economy has returned to growth in the second quarter of 2017, but unfortunately the recovery has been fragile because of the continuation of decline in oil revenues and a shortage of hard currency.
The bigger the economy in the real sense of it, the more difficult it is to move at a very high speed. So in which case, after we rebase, we should in fact, as policymakers, our policymakers should look very closely at China. Because China is one big economy that has been able to perform, let me call it that miracle, of growing fast in spite of the size.
The National Bureau of Statistics reported that oil production, on which the economy of the OPEC member states responded to 2.03 million barrels per day. President Buhari's budget of the year 2017 underscores record levels of spending, particularly on infrastructure, to try to revive growth, but unsuccessfully. The budget was delayed because legislators refused to approve, and even when it was passed, the capital spending was slow to occur. The common citizen in the street seems not to have much to say on this issue.
I don't know. But as far as for the progress of the country, I think it's not a bad idea. It's a nice one. It's a good one.
A lot of Nigerians, the average Nigerian on the street, don't care about the gross domestic product. What they care is what's in for them, as in terms of exchange of food.
Despite these problems, the Nigerian current government is proposing record spending of $27.03 billion for 2018, although economists have questioned whether this goal is reachable.
As announced in the headlines, it is one of the barometer of the state of the continent most scrutinized. The General Index Mo Ibrahim of the Governance 2017 has just been made public. First lesson, Africa is moving forward, but while governance is improving on the continent, progress is slow in some areas. Above all, situations differ from country to another. We make a point for you, ladies and gentlemen. Listen and watch.
On the 20th November, the Mo Ibrahim Foundation publishes its Index on African Governance. Published every year since 2007, this ranking is based on an index based on 100 or so indicators, from access to information to women's political participation, health and job creation. Overall, the Mo Ibrahim Index has been rising steadily since its creation. This progress is not going away in 2017. 40 countries have improved compared to the previous ranking, including Côte d'Ivoire, Namibia, Morocco, Kenya and Egypt, which have particularly positive trajectories. However, progress is slowing down, and the score of security and the rule of law, one of the four major categories constituting the index, is down sharply. Among the countries that have been receding for 10 years, Libya, not surprisingly, but also Madagascar, Mauritania or Mali. Cameroon is also experiencing a notable decline, particularly in terms of security and citizens' rights. Niger is also moving backwards on security, but also on the transparency of the private sector, while the political violence that is developing in the country is causing it to fall in the area of human rights. More surprisingly, Mauritius, however, number 1 in the rankings, worries the analysts of the foundation. If the island remains in the lead, the business climate deteriorates because of corrupt practices that are increasing. Zimbabwe, in the grip of a coup since a week, is among the countries that have made the progress in the last 10 years and reached the 37th place in 2016. Many warning signs remain, however, on credibility of electoral agencies, parity, violence against women, diversification of the economy, health, etc. On the other side, security and the rule of law are marked by 10 years of deterioration. This is the only one of the criteria of the index which shows a decline over the last 10 years. The deterioration of the rule of law on the continent has, however, slowed down over the past 5 years. According to the authors of the 2017 report, although the fall was very strong between 2007 and 2012, the curve now seems to be stabilizing.
In the same line, according to social media, 15 people were killed while 5 others were wounded at a food stampede in Sidi Boulalam, Morocco yesterday, Sunday, November 19, 2017. Georgina Piga tells us more.
According to social media today, Monday, November 20, 2017, this year's annual food aid distribution was being handed out by a private local charity in a local market in Sidi Boulalam, Morocco. This impoverished town, with just over 8,000 inhabitants, attracted a large crowd more than usual. People shoved and even broke down barriers, which led to 5 wounded, 40 injured, and 15 people killed. Our anonymous witness continues to tell us that those who were injured had been evacuated to a nearby hospital in Marrakesh, Morocco. Morocco's Interior Ministry said that King Mohammed VI had instructed the local authorities to help those affected and that he would personally cover all medical and funeral costs. Although we don't know what triggered this stampede and an investigation is presently underway, King Mohammed VI has dismissed the Ministers of Education, Planning and Housing to implement a development plan in order to fight against poverty in the Rif region.
Sporting news now. Gabonese Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is back in Borussia Dortmund. Director of Sport Michael Zorc confirmed that the Gabonese international presence on the field around on the ground, as they are to face Tottenham Hotspurs on Tuesday. Gauthier Prochano.
Borussia Dortmund has lifted the suspension on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, with their star striker set to face Tottenham Hotspurs in Tuesday's Champions League clash. Dortmund Director of Sports Michael Zorc confirmed Aubameyang is back in the squad after his suspension. As a reminder, the 29-year-old player had been suspended for coming late for training and also for shooting an unauthorized video at the club's training round. The Gabonese international was left out of Friday 2-1 defeat at Stuttgart, which saw the early season pace-setters drop to 5th in the Bundesliga table. Aubameyang, the Bundesliga's top scorer last season, is in a goal drought. As a matter of fact, the man has not added to his tally of 15 goals so far this season in his last 5 games dating back to October 13. Third-placed Dortmund must beat Group H leaders Spurs and hope Real Madrid fail to win at Apoel also on Tuesday to keep alive their thin hopes of reaching the last 16. As for Spurs, they are already assured of a place in the knockout stages, but a win will see them finish as group winners.
Finally, Ghanaian former AC midfield in Milan, Kevin Prince Boateng, has called on football authorities to do more than just stand behind slogans in a bid to combat racism. We listen to Georgina Piga for more facts.
German-born Ghanaian professional football player Kevin Prince Boateng, also known as KP Boateng, has spoken of the need for football authorities to do more in tackling racism. The Frankfurt midfielder has been a vocal supporter of anti-racism groups throughout his entire career and hit the headlines in 2013 when he walked off the pitch while playing for AC Milan after being subjected to abuse by pro-Patriot supporters. Boateng says that it's not enough to show a no to racism video or to wearing a shirt that says no to racism. He continues by saying that if someone calls him black, it's not accepted. It's called racism. Speaking about his past experiences, when he was younger, he had always tried to suppress this racism. Boateng joined Frankfurt from Lagos Palmas in August and scored Saturday's 1-1 draw goal of the season with Hoffenheim at the Rhein-Neckar Arena.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you a lot for choosing Label Television to inform you. Nevertheless, don't forget, stay tuned to our programs because the best is yet to come on your Pan-African channel. Goodbye.